Chapter 15. How to Be a Pony. Surprise! Pinkie Pie fired her party cannon. On instinct, I defensively raised my arms to cover my face and chest, bracing myself for an impact that would never come. The sound resonating from the cannon brought up horrid memories and scarring mental images that I tried so hard to suppress that when they flashed before my eyes. Bright, sparkling confetti, thin streamers that easily dampened the downpour, a terrible storm with brilliant streaks of lightning, blood. Lots and lots of blood.
Now that our special guest is here,
Pinkie announced,
let's get this party started!
Loud cheers from the ponies inside rang throughout the packed town hall. Upbeat music filled the building, and I could hear the residents of Ponyville start to mingle with each other. I cracked an eye open, realizing that I had closed them, and, seeing no harm, lowered my defenses. I stared around the building in awe. Never before had I seen so many ponies, or any living thing for that matter, in one place before. The middle of the building had suddenly become a dance floor, and some ponies were already showing off their skills to impress the crowd. There were a few snack bars stationed along the adjacent walls where ponies were sampling the food and drinks. I was surprised to see that the music was coming from a small band of ponies in the back made of a pianist, a couple of saxophones, a few trumpets, and other jazz-related instruments. In the middle of all the chaos of moving ponies, I spotted Lyra bounding over me.
Isn't this awesome, Hunter?
She asked over the music. A few seconds ticked by before my brain could formulate words. Yeah, I dumbly said. It's pretty amazing. Lyra seemed unconvinced. Are you alright? You look like you've seen a ghost or something. I'm fine, I assured her. I attempted to take in the scene of partying ponies again. How many ponies are here? About the whole town. The whole town? I sputtered. Lyra nodded. Yep. When news spread that Pinkie Pie was throwing a party and everyone was invited, every pony was eager to come. They didn't even mind that it was for you. I took a hesitant step back, overwhelmed at the sheer quantity of ponies before me. The whole town. I was almost tempted to leave, but Lyra dragged me into the sea of ponies before I could react. It was very difficult to navigate through the crowd, with the ponies being a little over half my height. I had to be careful not to trip over one of them. Unlike earlier, when they would usually try to get as far from me as possible, they didn't seem to mind my presence. They were too busy having a good time to worry about me. So where are we going? I asked as we weaved through the crowd. I don't know. I was just trying to get you away from the exit so you wouldn't sneak out, Lyra answered with a smile. Hey, dancing feels pretty good right now. You want to join me? I shook my head. Nah, I'm not in much of a dancing mood. You go enjoy yourself. Lyra gave me an uncertain look. Don't worry, I won't get in any trouble, I assured. I'll find something to occupy myself with. Lyra shrugged. Alright, I guess. I can't force you to dance. Besides, this is your party after all. Have fun! I waved as she melted into the crowd. She never really disappeared from my sight, though, since I was by far the tallest thing in the building. I suddenly stood there, looking like an idiot watching the various ponies socializing when Lyra's words finally settled in. This was my party. A small grin formed on my face and slowly grew to a large smile. This party was for me. My head was subconsciously shaking from disbelief, and a small chuckle escaped me. What should I do? Where should I go? Who should I hang out with? The snacks and punch was very alluring at the moment. Perhaps I could get a small bite and walk around, eavesdropping on some conversations until I found one that I could join. However, before I could set my plan in motion, the pink party pony herself bounced up to me from the crowd.
Hiya, Hunter!
Pinkie Pie smiled.
How's our special guest? Does he like the party?
Her smile grew wider and her eyes seemed to sparkle with delight. I'd say he likes it pretty well, I answered. Seriously though, this is incredible. I don't even know what to do.
Well, have I got a plan for you?
The excitement jumped behind me and pushed me forward.
I have a lot of games set up to help break the ice. You can play some of those for a while. I'll even play some of them with you. Then we can roll out the cake that's waiting for you.
You actually baked a cake? I asked incredulously.
Well, of course. What kind of party would it be if there was no cake?
I guess I'm just surprised you baked me a cake, I admitted. Honestly, I kind of thought that, well...
Thought what?
Pinky asked. I shook my head. Nothing. We finally broke out of the main chunk of the crowd and entered a corner, so to speak, filled with ponies playing various games. There were a few piñatas hanging from the tall ceilings. Some ponies played a game that appeared to be a variation of Twister. I was fairly surprised at how flexible some of them were, too. A bucket full of water was near the back of ponies bobbed for apples, and a large drawing of a pony was hung up on the wall with a detachable tail tacked to its flank. So, I said, clapping my hands together, what do I do? Instead of immediately responding, which would have been too easy, Pinkie Pie slipped a strip of cloth over my eyes and started tying it in the back. I had to fight the urge to swat her away.
We're playing pin the tail on the pony, she exclaimed.
With me still blindfolded, she pushed me further forward. I instantly held out my arms before me, even though the only thing I could have hit or tripped over would most likely be below my waist. I tried lifting the blindfold to at least catch a glimpse of my strength, but a hoof, perhaps Pinky, slapped my hand away as it reached my face.
No cheating, the mayor warned.
I was stopped, well, I don't exactly know where, but I had to be more or less in the front of the pony poster. As I stood there, I had that strange paranoid feeling that everybody was watching me. It was probably true. There wasn't much of a reason for the crowd of ponies to stop what they were doing and stare at the blindfolded behemoth.
Hey, Dashie, could you lend me a hoof?
Pinky's voice cried out. There was a small pause before Rainbow Dash's voice spoke up.
Sure, Pinky. What do you need? Could you spin Hunter for me?
Pinky asked. I've gulped.
Spinning him round while he's blinded, eh?
She sounded amused at the idea. I could have sworn I heard her snicker, too.
That sounds pretty fun. You ready for this, Hunter?
The sounds of flapping wings was close to my side. Not really, I admitted. How fast are you gonna go?
Not too fast,
Rainbow promised. My dark world was suddenly sent spinning as the Pegasus grabbed my shoulder and flew around in a tight circle. My feet struggled to keep up with the rapid acceleration and speed of my torso. I actually tripped a few times, but Rainbow managed to keep me from falling while spinning me like a top. I felt her hooves leave my shoulder, but the momentum kept me going in circles. My body eventually slowed down, and when I came to a complete stop, the world shifted from turning to tilting.
Here's the tail!
Pinky exclaimed. I felt the hairy substance get shoved in my right hand. My left hand felt along until I found the tack at the end.
Now go pin that tail on the pony!
A firm shove sent me tripping forward. My body slammed into the ground hard. I could hear a few chuckles from the crowd of ponies around me. My body heated up in embarrassment. It took all my willpower to not do anything rash. I put on a smile and laughed with the ponies. If they were laughing, I might as well make an act out of it. Not too fast, eh? I muttered under my breath. I'll be sure to thank you for that later, Dashie. I slowly rose back up and took a few wobbly steps forward. Watch out, I called over the music. Blinded human with a sharp object coming through. I made a few exaggerated sways to wherever I figured ponies were and laughed as some of them scrambled away whenever I drew too close to them. They moved were much lighter than usual. I actually heard some ponies on the other side of the crowd laughing as I swayed to and fro.
Come on, Hunter! You can do it! Left! Left!
Pinky shouted excitedly. I obeyed and adjusted my course.
No, your other left!
Pinky, how is he supposed to know his left from yours if he's blindfolded? Applejack's voice accused.
Oh, right, to the right! Right!
I rolled my eyes. A rather useless gesture with the cloth hiding my eyes from the rest of the world, but followed her instructions nevertheless. My outstretched hand soon met the wall. I felt around it in search of the poster, listening at the crowd of ponies as it gave me directions and cheered me on. I found it, after a few seconds. My right hand hovered over the poster as I tried to picture it in my head. It was near impossible to think, however, with all of the music and cheering ponies, so I did the only thing I could at the moment. I wished myself luck and stuck the tail. A chorus of laughter erupted as I planted the tail on the pony poster. I lifted my blindfold and soon discovered why. The tail was nowhere near the drawing of the pony. It was far off into the white space of nothingness above it. Pinkie Pie suddenly popped up beside me.
Oh, so close, she said. Maybe you'll do better next time, but we don't have time for that right now. There's fun to be had.
On that note, she pulled me deeper into the game center. I almost hated to admit it, but I was enjoying myself. It felt very different. I'd been invited to a few parties back at home before, but they were usually never anything bigger than a handful of people. Being here, surrounded by ponies, just felt so... Oh, what's the word? It felt good and awkward and funny and strange all at the same time. Overall, it was an interesting experience. I was dragged from game to embarrassing game. Applejack and Pink Pie and I bobbed for apples in the bucket. I, of course, came third with not a single apple caught. We shared a few laughs and made some light fun of each other. My next up was a rather awkward game of Twister. It was me and a bunch of ponies I had never met properly playing. I refused to go into any detail over what transpired, but long story short, ponies are flexible, and I am not. It took me and some other ponies some time to convince Pinkie Pie not to give me the bat and blindfold to hit the piñatas. Alright, it's official. I tiredly sighed as I departed from the games and into the main crowd. I am having a social overload. My eyes skimmed over the heads of ponies until they fell upon the dessert table. Must recharge, I deadpanned. I filled up a small cup with some punch, grabbed a cupcake, and wandered over to the other side of the massive room where the tables and chairs were stationed. As expected, the chairs were too uncomfortable and the table was too short, so I decided to take an empty table near the back wall. Placed my things on the knee-high table and sat down on the floor against the wall. My drink was still within arm's reach, and I grabbed it and took a small sip. My foot tapped in rhythm with the upbeat music. I watched the ponies as they danced, chatted, and walked around. The mishmash of multicolored ponies gave me a small migraine, but their movements were so mesmerizing I couldn't stop looking at them. Hey, Hunter? I looked up and saw Pinkie Pie, Rarity, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash standing before me. Yes? I felt uncomfortable with how they were presenting themselves. Applejack was trying hard not to make eye contact with me. Rainbow Dash wasn't flying like she normally did. Rarity looked a bit guilty and was pawing at the ground slightly, and Pinkie Pie wasn't bouncing around in her usual befriend everything that moves manner. Am I in trouble? I nervously asked. No, Rarity started. Not at all. We're just here to talk. I gave them a suspicious look. They just earned my full attention. Okay, what about? It's about the party, Applejack said. What about the party? I urged. Well, it's kind of more than a welcome party, Pinkie admitted. It's also, we're really, really sorry about attacking you, party. We felt simply awful about what we put you through after Celestia pardoned you, Rare explained. With all of the chasing and fighting and the tickle fights, we weren't exactly on our best behavior. Well, you did steal from us, put Rarity in the hospital, and kick Twilight in the face, Rainbow Dash pointed out. I would have given her a good slap across the back of the head. Ow! I mean, yeah, we're sorry and blah, 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 blah. Rarity and Applejack rolled their eyes. We noticed how much of a hard time you're having, so we decided to throw you a party to help you make yourself feel at home. Could you ever find it in your hearts to forgive us? Rarity asked through an apologetic smile. Something felt off about this picture. It wasn't the fact that they were doing this, even though it did surprise me. No, it had more to do with who was doing it or the lack thereof. Where's Twilight? The four ponies fidgeted nervously. Well, you see, Applejack started. Twilight had some important business to attend to and couldn't make it. Yeah, that's what she's doing. Her green eyes darted to the others for support. They caught on to her act and murmured in agreement. Unfortunately for her, I caught on to it too. She didn't want to come, did she? I asked. No, it wasn't that, Rarity promised. She really was occupied with something when we asked her, but she just wasn't exactly thrilled when she heard why we were throwing it. I'm sure she's sorry too, Pinkie said. She didn't sound like she was sorry, Rainbow added. I would have gave her another smack. Hey! What was that for? Some pony really needs to learn about censoring certain details in conversations, Rarity whispered harshly. Well, it was true, wasn't it? Rainbow retaliated. I cleared my throat, and their attention was directed back at me. It's fine, really. If Twilight didn't want to come, then Twilight didn't want to come. I don't need to hear her reasons. I got back on my feet and stretched my arms. As for any problems between me and you four, it's all water under the bridge for all I care. Pinky's mood lightened up a bit.
Really?
I nodded.
This is great!
The pink mare shot up into the air and paused mid-descent.
Ooh, I think the cake's all done,
she exclaimed. She then proceeded by darting to where the kitchen presumably was while still a few feet in the air. I lifted a hand to say something, but I dismissed the idea rather quickly. The 3 other ponies dispersed into the crowd, leaving me to my own devices. I finished off the punch and downed the cupcake in a few bites. I was about to go search for somebody to talk to when, lo and behold, Lara emerged from the sea of ponies.
There you are, she said. For a human in a crowd of parties, you're pretty hard to find.
I shrugged. What can I say? I've had some experience when it comes to hiding from you guys. Lara rolled her eyes and smiled. So, how goes it? We walked into the crowd of ponies, talking about the trivial things of life. Other ponies got sucked into our conversation over time. It's surprising how fast we all got along. The topics of discussion slowly escalated into more and more controversial things with the differences in our understandings of nature and science. It was hard to find a common ground in some cases where we could agree on. Thankfully, our disputes were broken up as Pinkie entered the room pushing a rolling cart with a towering cake.
The cake is ready,
she declared in a sing-song voice as she parked it next to the snack table. Instantly, a multitude of ponies rushed over to the amazing and edible architectural feat before them. It must have been 5 feet tall with 8 layers that progressively shrank the higher it went. The lead frosting was as smooth as marble. It almost pained me that such a beautiful cake was about to be mercilessly devoured.
Now, settle down, every pony, Pinkie shouted over the crowd. Since Hunter's our special guest, he gets the first slice.
There were a few audible groans, but the pony still gave me clear passage to the massive dessert.
Here you go, Hunter, Pinkie announced proudly. The first slice of cake.
I thankfully accepted a small plate with the perfectly cut cake placed on top. Unfortunately, the transaction wasn't as simple as I would have liked. As it would have it, some pony from the other side accidentally bumped into the cart holding the towering cake, causing it to slowly lean closer and closer to me until it finally fell. Pinkies all around me scattered as far as I could from the falling cake. I, on the other hand, tripped over my own feet and fell backwards, leaving me a vulnerable and easy target for the plummeting pastry. My arms instinctively rose to shield my face. What surprised me most was how heavy it weighed. It only stuck me from my knees to my head, and I could feel it difficult to stand up. Everything was dead silent. No one, not even the musicians, made a sound. I finally managed to get back up to my feet, and a large portion of the cake fell off of me and splattered across the ground.
Oh my gosh! I am so sorry!
Rainbow Dash apologized. I wiped the frosting out of my eyes and took a good look at my surroundings. All of the ponies were looking at me with fear. I also noticed they had backed up a considerable amount, giving me a perfect circle of space. The only pony who dared enter the no man's land was Rainbow Dash, who swung before me with a worried expression.
I didn't mean to, I swear!
I waved her off. I'm fine, really. The ponies didn't look convinced. Seriously, it was just a cake. It'll wash off eventually. I tried wiping the frosting off of my clothes as I said it, and an agitated grunt escaped me as I realized that it was only making the stains worse.
You aren't mad?
No, just a bit irked. Trust me, it's nothing. The tension in the air was dangerously high. I needed to find a way to break it, to prove to the ponies that I could laugh a few things off. An idea sprouted into my head, and a devious smile formed underneath the cake that covered my face. In fact, I said, just to prove that there are no hard feelings, I spread my arms and walked closer to the mare. Remember, I just floated back a bit.
What are you doing?
She asked with an uneasy smile. Come on, Dashy, let's hug it out.
What? No,
I cut her off with a swift embrace. She struggled to get out of my grasp as the cake spread from my arms and onto her fur. I made sure to cover as much of her body as I could before dropping her to the floor. I stepped back and admired my handiwork. Rainbow Dash was covered nearly head to foot in cake and was trying to get it off. As she muttered a few complaints, I could see a smile on her lips. Some laughs came from the crowd around us. I could already feel the tension lifting. Satisfied with how I handled the situation, I turned around and walked back to the mound of cake. A sticky projectile suddenly struck me in the back of the head. I paused for a second, rubbing the frosting from the point of impact, and turned around. Rainbow Dash was bearing a competitive smile on her cake-covered face, and in one hoof she was tossing a small chunk of cake in the air. I shook my head in disbelief and scooped up a chunk of cake off the floor. All the eyes were darting between me and the Pegasus. "You do realize, Rainbow Dash," I smiled, "this means war." I drew my arm back and pitched the cake in the sky blue mare's direction. She instinctively dodged out of the way. Not that there was much of a reason to. I missed her by a long shot. The cake sailed through the air into the crowd, landing, much to my horror, in Rarity's mane. Well, crap. The white unicorn stared at me in shock. "Oh, no, you didn't?" she seethed. Rarity glared at the snack table, and 3 cookies instantly rose up. Determination burned in her deep blue eyes. With a smirk, she magically sent the pastries flying towards me. I dropped to the floor, and each cupcake harmlessly flew over me and hit a different pony in the crowd. "Hey! Now, every pony," Pinky said. She had an uneasy look as all of the ponies in the room put on sinister faces. Eyes darted this way and that as ponies chose their own targets and ammunition. "There's no reason for us to food fight!" Chaos erupted throughout the room as ponies everywhere scrambled to find something to throw. Rainbow Dash and I, being closest to the fallen cake, had no trouble finding our supply. We grabbed our share of cake and split off in our respective directions. I was laughing throughout the entire ordeal. The thought of being in an actual food fight always intrigued me, but let's be honest, who wouldn't be interested in the idea? There was never an opportunity back home, either due to pesky school rules in the cafeteria, the lack of supplies at home, or the fact that no one ever wanted to. Some of my friends and I once thought about doing it once, but the closer and closer it came to lunch, the less we were willing to go through with it. What made it most enjoyable, in my opinion, was the fact that having it with the ponies made it all the more interesting. Pegasi dominated the air with dive bomb the crowd below. Occasionally a dogfight would break out, and in the aftermath of splattered snacks would rain down on us below. Unicorns had one of their best advantages of the group. With their magic, they could easily manipulate the projectiles however they pleased. The Earth ponies, well, they fared however they could. Everybody was having a blast. Surprised squeals and uncontrollable laughter became the new song of the party. I myself managed to score a few hits, but usually I was the receiver of pies, cakes, and basically everything else. In an attempt to find a small break from the madness, I jumped over the snack table, grabbing one of the pies on top of it as an extra precaution, hunkered down, and allowed myself to exhale. Lara crawled out from under the table and sat next to me. "Hey, Hunter," she said breathlessly. "Pretty crazy party, huh?" "Oh yeah," I laughed. "You can say that again." "I can't believe you did that to Rainbow Dash," she continued. "For a second, I thought I was going to pull you out with all of that tension." "You were worried about me?" I smiled. "Come on, Lara, this is me we're talking about. I got this." The mayor laughed at my response. "Seriously, though, how did you know that it would turn out okay?" I shrugged and suggested, "Magic?" I looked up to see some of the food still flying around. I just caught sight of the pie still in my hands, and a devious smile split my face. "Hey, Lyra?" "Tag!" I splattered the pie across her face before she had a chance to react, and then hopped over the table and into the mayhem of ponies. Almost instantly, various foods were flung in my direction. There was no attempt on my behalf to dodge them. I was too busy running from the mint green unicorn who was chasing me. "Don't you think you can run away from me?" Lyra shouted. I made the mistake of turning on to see just how much distance was between me and her, and was surprised when the laughing and still pie-covered Lyra was already in the air, just about to tackle me. The force she hit me with was more than enough to send me falling. The pain I received as my back hit the wooden floor did not go unnoticed by me, but we were laughing too much for me to really care. "Pony pile on, Hunter!" a random pony shouted. It wasn't too long until a large and rather heavy mass of multicolored ponies accumulated on top of me. All of the weight on my body and lack of airspace was suffocating, almost painfully so, and yet I still found myself laughing. I couldn't recall another time I had had this much fun, or smiling this much for that matter. My jaw was aching, I was running short of oxygen, and my eyes were tearing up a bit. It was without a doubt the greatest time of my life since I came here, and I owed it all to my new pony friends. Unfortunately, the party had to end, and the number of ponies inside the town hall slowly dwindled away. Soon, all that was left was me, Lara, Applejack, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, and Pinkie Pie. Lara and I offered to stay and help pick up the place. There was quite a mess after the war died down, but the others refused to let us even pick up a rag. After saying our goodbyes, they sent us on our way. We were utterly exhausted by the time we returned to Lara and Bonbons. In fact, when we trudged upstairs and into Lara's room, we paid no mind to the dessert stains that kicked our bodies as we plopped onto the large bed. Bonbon would probably clean the sheets later. The mint green unicorn fell asleep the second her head hit the pillow. I uttered 3 last words before I myself was lulled to sleep by the sound of the snoring mare. Best night ever. The next morning, Applejack gave me that day off, leaving me free to do whatever I wanted until 12 o'clock. Unfortunately, the vast majority of said morning was spent locked up in Lara's bedroom. The experience might not have been as bad if I wasn't half naked and shivering in the cold air. How I got stuck in this situation is a rather complicated story. I say complicated. In all actuality, it was more uncomfortable than complex. When Lara and I awoke in the morning, we were still covered head to toe hoof in frosting, pie, cake, and a myriad of other foods that I didn't care to go in depth with. For Lara, removing the stains in her coat would be simple. All she had to do was take a bath to wash it away. I, on the other hand, was met with a dilemma of a much more severe magnitude. My body and my clothes were stained. I'd had a jacket, shirt, and jeans had already undergone enough suffering as it is, and now every square inch of them had become a canvas for the artists flinging food around last night. I sighed as I realized the inevitable. I was going to have my outfit washed and, if possible, repaired. The whole ordeal probably would have started much smoother if Lara hadn't started asking questions. She didn't understand the relationship between humans and clothing, especially a self-conscious one like me. We even had a 30-minute debate over the matter. It wasn't that she thought the notion was stupid, she was just curious as to why I was so reluctant to go without them. Unfortunately, I couldn't come up with a logical reason as to why I was, and to both of our annoyance, I had to play the cliche "it's a human thing" card. She agreed to take my clothes and get cleaned and repaired as I waited at her house. After a complicated process of figuring out a way to give her my clothes without seeing me completely naked, I found myself standing, wearing nothing but a towel, in her room with the door closed. I had already taken a shower and thoroughly dried myself so that I wouldn't drip when I left. For some odd reason, I figured I would have returned by the time I finished, and now I was standing awkwardly in her bedroom, shivering slightly as the water still on my body evaporated. Lara was taking too long. I was beginning to feel antsy at the lack of things to entertain myself with. The room was still as messy as the first time I saw it, maybe a bit less. Lara had yet to do something with the posters she made of me, and they offered little entertainment. They were all just the same ominous drawing of me. Now that I was actually looking at it, I realized just how intimidating it made me appear. After what transpired last night, it was a bit unsettling to see this version of me. An hour of complete boredom stretched on before Lara returned with my clothes, washed and fully repaired to top it off. She apologized for her lateness and explained that Rarity, who had been so generous to repair my tattered rags, wanted to try and duplicate them for future projects. The unicorn didn't get into any further depth of the matter, and I didn't press for any details. I was ready to get my clothes on. Lara allowed me some privacy to change into my outfit, and after double-checking that I wasn't forgetting anything, we left the house. I noted how much the citizens of Ponyville's attitude towards me had changed tremendously since yesterday. They weren't necessarily throwing themselves at me to greet me whenever we passed, but they weren't avoiding me either. I would receive a brisk nod at times, sometimes it would be a friendly wave, and in a few rare cases the ponyco would go out of their way to call my name and greet me. Lara was simply beaming with happiness for me. I couldn't resist a grin either. "Hey, Hunter! a particularly young and male voice called out. I craned my head in the voice's direction and saw Spike running over to us, clutching a scroll in his hand. "Hold up!" he panted. I squatted down to be more at his eye level as he drew closer. "Sup, Spike?" He held out the scroll. "Twilight wanted me to give this to you." I accepted the parchment and unrolled it. My list of chores was even smaller than yesterday's. Either the ponies were running out of things to give me, or they were going easy on me. I certainly hoped it was the latter. "Sorry about not making it to your party last night," the young dragon said. "Twilight had me reorganize the library. Twice." "I'm sorry to hear that. Don't worry, though. You didn't miss much. Trust me. Just a few games and music." Spike shrugged. It's still better than what I did last night." "Well, I gotta get along. Twilight has me running a few errands. Later, Hunter." "Later." I rose back to my full height and looked over the chores again. Raking leaves, refilling the water tower, fixing the school playground, and a meeting with the mayor. I read out loud. Shouldn't be too hard. "Let me see it," Lara said. Agunor ripped the scroll from my grasp and presented it before the unicorn. "I'll tell you what," she announced as the parchment ripped in two. "You worry about the playground and the meeting, and I'll handle the leaves in the water tower." One of the halves of paper floated up to me, bearing the two tasks Lara proposed. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Lara nodded. "This way we can get finished faster. Divide and conquer." I didn't argue with her logic. Honestly, I didn't mind the help. We said our goodbyes and took our separate paths. I had to ask for directions a couple times, seeing as how I had never actually been to the school, and eventually the large red structure came into sight. At the top of a high flagpole, a red triangular flag was blowing gently in the breeze. The foals were already having their recess period, and Miss Shirley was standing on the porch of the school's front door, watching them over them as they played. The teacher caught sight of me and waved me over. I briskly covered the distance between us. "Good morning, Hunter," Shirley greeted. "I didn't expect to see you until this afternoon." "As you can see, the foals are still playing. Would you like to come back another time?" I stole a glance in the playground's direction. Most of the fillies and colts had stopped what they were doing now and eyeing me with curiosity. It was borderline unnerving, but I was sure they didn't mean anything by it. They were just kids, after all. I think I can work under the conditions." "Did you bring any tools with you?" I faltered for a second. I figured tools would be provided. They always had been so far. Was I supposed to? "Well, no, not exactly," the teacher said. She disappeared into the schoolhouse and returned with an old toolbox. "I just figured you'd..." She spit the toolbox onto the porch and tried again. "I just figured you'd want to use more conventional utensils than these." Shirley marked her point by giving the box a light kick. I examined my inventory. It didn't look very good. An old time-worn hammer was the first thing I saw. Its wooden handle was rough, as though it had been used for generations, and there were a few cracks in the wood near the rusty head. There was a small compartment filled with brown and orange nails. Their surface felt brittle as I picked a few up and felt them. There was an old screwdriver, too, made useless due to the fact that there weren't any screws. Last, and probably least, was a handsaw. It was easy to tell that it had once been a tool to envy, but time was not kind to it. Most of its teeth were dull, and the blade itself had long lost its luster. "Someone needs to put these tools out of their misery," I commented. "Yes, but I'm afraid it's all I can offer." I pondered over the situation for a moment, and then asked, "What all do I have to do?" "Not too much, I believe," Shirley answered, rubbing her chin with the hoof. "One of the picnic tables needs a few minor repairs. The fence is missing a post, and the seat of one of the few swings has split in two. Do you think you can handle that?" I nodded, picked up the toolbox, and got to work. The stable sounded like the easiest job, so I decided that would be the best place to start. It wasn't hard to find. Unlike all of the others, a couple of the planks of the stable was disheveled, and one of the seats was splintered. I set the toolbox down on the ground, withdrew the old hammer and a few nails, and got to work on the tabletop. Luckily, the two long planks were only pried off. All they needed to do was be nailed back into place. After I removed their rusty nails and realigned the two planks in their appropriate positions, I began hammering them in place with newer rusty nails. As I labored, I felt an odd sensation in the back of my head. That sensation you get when you know everyone in a room is staring at you. Knowing that my assumptions were probably correct, I shrugged off the feeling and continued. It wasn't until I heard a familiar, young, southern voice spoke my name that I reacted.
Howdy, Hunter. What brings y'all here?
I turned around and found the Crusaders standing behind me. They looked happy to see me, and a small silent crowd of roughly a dozen other fools was behind them with expressions of curiosity and all.
Are you here to listen to my report?
Scoodle asked hopefully. I noticed the white bandages wrapped around her torso. A pit formed in my stomach at the sight of the injured filly. Not exactly. I'm actually here to do some chores, I answered carefully as I returned to the repairs, but I'd still love to hear it. When are you giving it?
Today. I've got a feeling I'm going to ace it, too, Scoots answered with a wide grin. Do you think you'll be able to show up for it? I have a feeling it would be totally cool to have the topic of my report there. Maybe Miss Shelley would give me bonus points for it.
I'll see what I can do, I answered. I've got my plate full at the moment, but if you give me a heads up, I'll attend. The orange Pegasus's eyes widened in delight.
Really?
She jumped up and hugged my stomach, wings buzzing to keep her supported.
Thanks, Hunter. You're the coolest human I know. This is going to be one of the coolest presentations ever.
All right, calm down. I smiled. Scootaloo eventually released me, and the Crusaders and I had a small conversation as I worked. They mostly talked about new ways to earn their cutie marks. I wasn't very much help in that field. It still befuddled me at how ponies were taught at such a young age to find what their special talent was, which would ultimately lead to what their careers would involve. In a sense, I suppose that made them more mature than humans, as radical a notion it seemed. It did make me wonder, though, what that meant some fools such as Snip, Snails, and Diamond Tiara would be doing for a living. By the time I had finished the picnic table, recess for the kids was over. I waved Applebum, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo goodbye as they departed the class, and the Pegasus filly promised to ask Miss Charlie to let me listen to her report. I gathered my equipment and migrated over to the fence. After the better part of an hour had transpired, I had the new post installed. The process would have taken much longer if a random pony hadn't happened to walk by while I was working on it. She claimed she didn't know very much in the field of carpentry, but she did give me a few good pointers on how to install the post without royally screwing everything up. The last thing on my list was the swing set. After that, I would be done. And it was barely even in the afternoon, which meant more time for me to spend doing whatever. I wondered how Lyra was faring at the moment. She wasn't exactly having the hardest jobs, but at the same time she wasn't having the least entertaining ones either. Refilling an entire water tower must be a long, dull process. At least she probably wasn't doing it with a water hose or something along that nature. I examined the broken swing and tried to assess the best way to repair it. The jagged split in the wooden seat was impossible to repair with a simple hammer and nails. That was the best I could do, too. It wasn't like a screwdriver could do much good in this situation. After giving the broken swing one last look, I stood up and made my way back to the schoolhouse. Perhaps Shirley overlooked some tools that would do better suited to fix the swing. If not, I could just have to tell her that I did the best I could manage. As I walked by the side of the building, I could hear Miss Shirley go through one of the opened windows.
Scootaloo, are you ready to give your presentation?
I froze.
Yes, Miss Shirley,
Scootaloo replied. I drew closer to the open window in curiosity and strained my ears to listen to the class. My back was leaned against the wall so that I wouldn't be seen by any of the students. I wasn't sure why I was doing it, but so that I wouldn't be a distraction.
Do you think I could call Hunter to hear it?
No, that's not a problem. Let's not bother him. He probably wants to get done as soon as he can, the teacher answered. I stole a glance through the window. It was in the back of the class, giving me a perfect view of the whole class. All of the fools' backs were turned towards me, save for the orange filly with the purple mane at the front. Scoots was busy setting up an easel with the picture she drew of me. Once again, most of them were dark and ominous, portraying me as the monster that was raised in a savage forest. Was that really what I looked like to them? I wondered.
It is always interesting to see how others perceive you, isn't it?
The voice noted. No kidding, I thought back. What's even more unsettling is that they aren't even photographs. They're drawings. That's what Scootaloo perceived me as.
Your point being?
I don't know, I whispered. I guess I just wish I could have made a better impression.
You did what you needed to survive,
the voice reasoned.
and you succeeded. That is all that matters.
Maybe. Scootaloo stood at the front of the class and observed her crowd. She appeared a bit nervous at first, but when her eyes fell upon the window I was looking through, a bright smile made its way on her mouth. I returned the favor and gave her a thumbs up. The filly cleared her throat before starting. My report is on the mysterious human from the Everfree Forest, more commonly known as Hunter Grey. I leaned in the window, resting my elbows on the sill as the filly gave her report. She had really put a lot of effort into this project of hers. It was too bad that some of her key points were off. With the report being about me, one would think that she would at least ask me a few questions to clear up the details. She was fortunate that none of the ponies knew anything about humanity, otherwise she might have made a rather poor grade. Coincidentally, her report ended just as the bell rang. A whirlwind of fools erupted towards the door, eager to return to their respective homes. I leisurely strode over to the front. There was still a small trickle of fillies and colts leaving when I arrived at the front door. They gave me some awe-filled stares as I patiently waited for them to depart before entering. Just as I thought there were no more ponies, I stepped inside. Miss Shirley was sitting at her desk, grading papers. 3 anxious Cutie Mark Crusaders stood before her desk, apparently waiting for the teacher to finish. I cleared my throat to announce my presence, causing all 4 ponies to stare at me. Yes, Mr. Gray? Miss Shirley asked. I'm finished with what I can do, ma'am, I reported. The table's fixed, and I installed the new post. I don't know how to fix the swing, though. You might want to ask someone a bit more inclined in construction for that job. Oh, here are your tools, too. I deposited the toolbox on the teacher's desk where it wouldn't be in the way of her work. Thank you very much, Hunter. It means a lot to me, Shirley said. It would have been nice for that swing to be fixed, though. I suppose I'll have to make a few calls. You're free to go. Have a good day. She redirected her attention to the paper before her and made a few last remarks on it before handing it to Scootaloo. As I was walking out the door, I could hear her say, And there you go, Scootaloo. That was a very informative report. Have a good weekend, girls. The Crusaders shot out of the school and headed in some random direction, probably preparing for another crusade. I smiled as I overheard their list of things to try next to get their cutie marks. Their happy and excited nature reminded me a lot of Brandon, my youngest brother. Brandon. My smile quickly faded, along with my bright mood. How's my youngest brother dealing with my absence? How's my entire family dealing with it, for that matter? Nobody in my family has ever had to deal with anything like this before. To them, I was still lost in the woods, suffering, all alone, perhaps even dead. It felt so unfair that they were probably worried sick over me while I was living in a world of peace, prosperity, and ponies. I wanted to go home, or just find someone to communicate with them to tell them I was alright. I was hating to admit it, but I was slowly starting to lose the will to search for the portal. I couldn't go back into the forest and continue my search, at least not by myself. As bad as I wanted to meet my family, I wasn't about to go into the forest with that wooden monstrosity still alive and filled with a thirst for revenge. I'm sure my family would understand. I realized that I had already subconsciously arrived at the town hall. I took a deep breath and shook my head, attempting to dispel the dark atmosphere that shrouded my mind. With a half smile as my mask, I opened the door and walked inside. The first thing I noticed was how clean the inside was. Pink and her friends really knew how to clean up the place. All the food stains, banners, ribbons, and balloons were completely gone. If I hadn't been there the previous night, I would never have guessed there was a party. The next thing I noticed was the 3 ponies inside. One out of the 3, I only recognized the mare. The other 2 were a complete mystery to me. One of them bore the attire of a guard, though instead of golden armor similar to the guards of Westlacia, his armor was a purple and deep blue. The third figure in the group stood out the most. She was very tall, the second tallest pony I have encountered. Her eyes probably went a little below my chin, but her long horn easily cleared the top of my head. Her wings were tucked neatly at her sides. She had a dark blue coat, and her cutie mark looked like somebody tossed a can of black paint on her flank and painted a white crescent moon over it. Her mane and tail was similar to Celestia's, in the sense that it was flowing majestically in a non-existent breeze. Unlike Celestia's, though, this pony's mane was deep blue with a light purple aura surrounding it with white specks that twinkled like stars inside the blue. She wore a black tiara and necklace, the latter of which had a white crescent moon on it. It looked so familiar, but why?
Ah, Mr. Gray! What a coincidence! We were just talking about you, the mayor said, jogging me out of my trance.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Oh, not at all, the mayor assured. Princess Luna and I were just discussing a few ideas for the upcoming Nightmare Night Festival.
The taller pony stared at me with curious cobalt eyes. The guard stiffened.
Princess?
I asked.
That is correct, the tall one said. My name is Princess Luna. I have heard many things about you from my sister, Celestia. It is a pleasure to meet you.
And it is an honor to meet you, Princess, I replied, hoping to make a good impression. I redirected my attention to the mayor. So, what's the game plan?
I must have been a madman to accept that job. It was suicidal, ludicrous, and downright stupid for me to do. As I lay on Lara's bed, staring up into the darkness where the ceiling was supposed to be, my mind couldn't help but come up with all of the crazy scenarios that could go wrong. A haunted hayride. That was all it was going to be. Just me and Big Macintosh giving some fools a ride in the night, in the Everfree Forest. He would pull the cart, and I would rack the kids' nerves before he would deposit them on a safe path. Sakura, Pinkie Pie, and Rainbow Dash had volunteered as chauffeurs to lead the Coles out of the forest. I voiced my reluctance to go anywhere near the forest, but Princess Luna assured me that she and her night guards would have the place safely protected. Her promise didn't help the knot in my stomach, though. In the end, I took the job. Ever since I gave the mayors a shaky handshake and left the building, I was bombarded by wave after wave of anxiety. Lara asked what had me so jittery when we met up for dinner. My pale face and fidgeting hands must have given way. When I explained my dilemma, she shared my concern, but assured me that with Luna watching over me, I had nothing to be afraid of. 4 hours later, I found myself in bed and still in a state of unrest. Everything could go according to plan tomorrow, or everything could take a horrid turn for the worst. Regardless of how things would play out, one thing was certain. Tomorrow was going to be one heck of a day.